Okay, so hello, we're going to have a go at doing some birch trees in a little bit of snow. So first of all, pop your snowy ground level on, and then we're just going to draw in our wobbly, uneven birch trees. I'm going to make this one into a double here. Put one here. Quite a thin one, I think, this one. Getting a bit thicker at the base. So there we go. So there's my trees in a line. I am going to just take the rubber and rub them out a little bit, because if I leave the pencil marks there too much, they show through watercolours because of the texture. I did it quite dark because of, so that you could see it. So you've got the you can still see the outlines, hopefully. Now, just to help me, I'm going to get a little bit of either a white wax crayon, or this is just a piece of candle wax, and I'm just going to run a little bit down the sides and across each of the tree trunks, so that we get some sort of wax resist, because birch trees have got beautiful textures on them. If you haven't got any wax, that's fine, don't worry. It's not essential, it just adds a little bit of texture, and I like texture. Also helps separate the tree. Just put some little marks into the trees, into the trunks. Okay, so time to wake up my paints. So I'll do a little bit of a squirt. Down, let them wake up like having a decent coffee. And I'm going to use, to start with, I'm just going to use this little squirrel mop brush. You could use a number 8 round, synthetic round, and that would be helpful. So I'm going to start by taking some of this burnt sienna, nice beautiful earthy colour, and I'm just going to drop it into this first area. I am working on a slight angle, so that's why it's pooling, which is nice and helpful. So into that, so I've just washed my brush, take the excess water off. I'm going to drop in some phthalo blue into that. You can drop in any blue that you want. A bit more burnt sienna. So I'm trying to create the idea of a darker forest behind it. And then I'm going to drop in some turquoise green, I think. Yeah, some turquoise, that's nice. So next to the tree trunks, you want the darker colours because that'll help the tree trunks stand out. And then whatever shape you want your snow to be on the base. So that's number one. I might just drop a little bit more darker burnt sienna in there. Some more saturated burnt sienna. Add a little bit of colour within there. So whilst it's still damp, I'm going to scratch some branches into it using the edge of a plastic card. It leaves much sort of finer dark marks, but they are permanent. So if you're not confident with that, give it a try on some scrap paper first. Looking at the end of this, and then I'm going to get my trusty little table salt. Here's my table salt, and I'm just going to drop a little bit of table salt onto there for it to add a little bit of texture. So that's the first one done. So we're moving on to the next one, and we're just going to work our way across doing the same sort of thing. So this is burnt sienna, beautiful, bright, lovely orangey browny colour. I do like this for sort of an autumn feel, and I'm just going into the space between the trees. Well, you can see that wax has just helped me there. So I'm going to use some more of that phthalo blue just to create the darkness of the forest. you go onto the tree trunk, it's not the end of the world because trees aren't straight anyway. Quite like how that's mixed together on that one. Take my little card and scratch in some fine branches from both sides. Just going to wait a little bit until the shine's just going off the paper. If it's too wet, the salt just dissolves and doesn't actually create any texture. It's a bit of a balancing act. I just drop a little bit of salt in. So I want to start to introduce soon the sky, but I'm just going to do one more darker forest based. So this is the gap between the trees. And remember, we're leaving the shape of whatever the snow is. Dark up next to those tree trunks. Going to add some raw sienna into this one, just to break it up a little bit more. So I didn't want that whole blue, and then I'm going to go back to the burnt sienna. Sorry, I've just bashed the camera. Let me just try and zoom in a little bit for you so that you can see what's going on. So here you should be able to see the salt starting to work. You have to leave the salt to do its own thing. This is a really nice way of putting in twigs and branches darker without having to paint thin lines. But remember, it is always permanent. I personally don't like the pooling at the bottom, so I always use a thirsty brush just to suck it up. You might like it, that's fine. So I'm going to drop the salt into that. so I'm now moving, and I want to start showing the blue of the sky. So I'm just going to use a little bit of cerulean, which is a light sky blue colour, for the very top. I'm going to be brave and do this bit here as well. So it looks like the sky is coming at the same time through the painting. Back to my trusty burnt sienna. Plenty of water on your brush. If you find it's drying quickly, you can just get your little spray bottle like this and give it a squirt, and it'll just reactivate it for you. So I'm just dropping in some darks. Intense burnt sienna. Just going to turn this round for a minute, try and help it go down into, wash my brush off, plenty of water. Your little trusty card. Remember, these are permanent. And if they go like that onto the tray, it's fine. We can work with that, or you can just get a little damp, a little dry tissue and just give it a dab. Just waiting for it to go off a little bit more for us to be able to put the salt on. I think this one's about ready. But I think that's a little bit too wet still. I might have to come back and see what happens there. Okay, so then with this one, because that cerulean blue didn't stay wet very long, I'm just wetting this down. So the sky blue colour on first, the cerulean, the sky blue, and that sense of the sky coming through now quite strongly. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of the burnt sienna at the bottom, as if they're like bushes. And then I'm going to add some burnt umber, which is like a light brown. Because I want that sense of going deeper into the forest. And then I'm going to add a turquoise just to darken these bottom bits. Just like mixing the paper. Add a little bit of white into there just to add a bit of texture. I'm just going to put some bushes with a little card into there, maybe a branch or two. So back in with some water for this one. Going to take this excess off here. And I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of salt, but just down in the bush area down here. water into this area. So I want some more of that nice bright cerulean blue at the top. So that's the sky, and I'm going to drop the sky all the way into here. And all the way down into here. I'm just going to suck up that water a little bit. Just soften that off. So a little bit of burnt sienna, quite bright into these two areas now. And then I'm trying to just drop a little bit of that turquoise blue in to both. And then with my card, I'm just going to put the grasses or bushes or twigs or whatever they are. And then a little bit of tree sculpting. A little bit of salt. And that's going to be the end of the first half, and I need to go rest. But hopefully you can see the salt starting to work, which is really nice. Just getting myself tangled up in the wires. So I'm going to leave that to cook a little bit more. And hopefully you can see how we've got the background in, and we can then work on putting the foreground together. Okay, so I'm back. It's quite cold here today, so the salt's just taking a little while to act, but hopefully, let me just do this one, you can see that it's starting to work, and it gives you these beautiful textures, particularly with the turquoise and the ultramarine and the burnt sienna. Nice textures. So here we are. We're going to have a go at doing the groundwork whilst this is nearly dry. We're going to put some grasses onto here with my little trusty rigger brush, and I'm just going to use some sap green with a touch of burnt sienna. You can mix your own, whatever colour green you want. So that's sap green. I'm just going to add a little bit of burnt sienna into it because I like the colour harmony. And it makes more of an olivey green. If you wanted a bit more blue into it, a bit of ultramarine, darkens it up nicely. So I'm just working with this, and so at the base of my trees I'm just going to put some clumps of grasses just poking through. So they're sort of poking through the snow. Just added a little touch of phthalo blue, just so that we've got a bit of harmony here. And having a couple of greens sometimes just helps bring the foreground to life a little bit. I do quite like painting off the paper as well. So I'll just pop the grasses on. And now I'm going to carry on using my rigger brush, and I'm going to use a little bit of burnt sienna, and a little bit of Payne's grey. Fairly concentrated because we want some nice colours from those two, and they mix into a really beautiful sort of dark brown as well. Nice pair of colours. So we're going to think about the trees, and the light's going to come from this side, and birch trees have just got the most beautiful little markings on them. So this is just my light brown burnt sienna mix at the start. I'm just letting my rigger brush do some of the work. Picking up some Payne's grey now and going back over to get that different texture. just having that little puddle of Payne's grey and burnt sienna just helps. If you haven't got Payne's grey, you can use a black and burnt sienna, black and browny orange mixture, or a black and blue mixture. You want a bit of contrast for the darks. And then we're going to just do that all the way along. And you can do this whilst you're resting. You can do it in bed. I have done. So this tree I want to bring down here a bit more, as if it's in the foreground. Drop in some burnt sienna. And all we're doing is moving along. Tree to tree. Remember, there's no right or wrong way. Quite a bit of salt on this one. I don't know if there's salt on that one. And if you've got a blob, just make something of it. So here we've got a darker side of the tree. This is where that paint bled a little bit. And I'm just going to make this tree trunk come a little bit further down as well. So picking up my dark. So if it's quite light next to it, just run a little bit more dark down that side to define the tree. We are going to put a very weak shadow colour across in a little while. I've just washed my brush out and I'm just going to soften that away. So we're moving on to these now. So try not to get into too much of a pattern with it. If you're anything like me, you end up doing a bit of a pattern, and the trees themselves don't really go in that sort of a pattern. So you can see here how the wax is